Welcome to the Peace and All Good podcast. I am here today with Wendy Smith and Deb Schneider, two of the Franciscan Peacemaker Board members who have demonstrated a really solid commitment to advocacy and education around the issue of human sex trafficking. So I'm here today with them and really anxious to dive into a great conversation about their work and how they got to Peacemakers. So let's start there. Wendy, tell us how you got started in your role as a board member with Franciscan Peacemakers.
Long story short, as Deacon Steve loves to hear, Deacon Steve walked into Faith and Giggles, the gift shop that my husband and I own, one day, I believe it was in 2014, and with soaps at that time. And we started selling the soaps at the store. And I meanwhile, got more involved in the human trafficking world and got more educated. I consulted with Deacon Steve on things and got to know him better, and really got more involved. My heart felt very impassioned, and I felt very called to the cause throughout that time frame. Within about a year of getting to know that topic, and through different circumstances, we ended up starting our own anti-trafficking group and educating our community in Washington County. And then from there, Deacon Steve asked if I would be interested in being a board member for Peacemakers.
And Deb, what was your path to the Franciscan Peacemakers Board?
Well, I've been involved in youth ministry and also human concerns at my parish. And so I've had a long time knowledge of Deacon Steve's ministry, but about 6 years ago, one of our Human Concerns Committee meetings, our adult minister, who is a sister, came to the meeting and said, we really ought to be involved in the issues of human trafficking in our parish. And you might know that a lot of the sisters groups are involved with this issue of human trafficking. And so I had said to her, I think that's really important. If you are involved with it, then I'll get involved with it. And so I and another gentleman from our parish started a group. We did research for a whole year on the topic and looked at it from a global perspective, a local perspective. And we really came to the conclusion it was just such an enormous issue that we needed to focus on what was going on locally. And so we connected in with Franciscan Peacemakers, and over a period of time, I was asking Deacon Steve to do presentations with me. We were doing presentations at other congregations and meetings, and it became clear that we needed to help other congregations get ministries going as well. So Deacon Steve assisted with that, and then he asked me to be on the board for Franciscan Peacemakers and to assist at that level as well.
I'm curious, what has been your biggest learning about the issue of human sex trafficking at the local level?
How little people know about trafficking, sex trafficking, and how they don't believe that it's going on in the suburbs. They think it's a Milwaukee issue, and that, if we weren't sitting next to Milwaukee, we wouldn't have this problem. And so that I think has been one of the biggest messages that we have had out there, and just talking about that this is an issue in our community. And I think we've been pretty successful at spreading that word to the point where we've been able to work with the county and various entities in the county and are now connected into a Waukesha County wide human trafficking task force or anti-human trafficking task force. So I think that message is getting out there, but it took quite a bit of time to make that real to people.
And I'd imagine that the trafficking looks different in the Waukesha County, say, than it does in Milwaukee. So, we actually, as peacemakers, we go out on the street and we engage with women who are actively prostituting on the streets of Milwaukee. Often they're working for a pimp. who is exploiting and trafficking them, right? But what does trafficking look like in the suburbs, in Hartford, where you are, Wendy, or in Waukesha County, where you are, Deb? What does it look like?
Well, and this is really perfect timing, this question, because that is exactly what my message is, in addition to what Deb said, just getting people to understand it really is happening, but getting them to understand what it is in their community and what it looks like. And that, I think that the phrase sex trafficking just disconnects people sometimes, right away. Like, they just look at that as something so global and so elsewhere and so unrelatable that they just shut down and don't listen. What I have found is, the fact that there's so much happening online, and parents can relate to things happening with their kids online because they know that they're on there. I think I really try to use the visual of a line of continuum, and I tell them to start at ground zero and talk about the grooming process. And for instance, I'm working with a woman just now in the present, yesterday, today, whose daughter, 14 years old, has been groomed online. She found pictures, and it went from she just thought it was in her underwear, and now she found there's been nude. And the girl is devastated, the mom is devastated, and they're at that point of, what do I do next? And I think people don't understand that there's a number out there that says 43% of victims of sex trafficking have never even met their trafficker because it's done online. And I think when they hear that number, it really resonates, because that's something that I think people in the suburbs can go, oh my gosh, that means they didn't have to leave my house. And that's what I say. They can be sitting right in your kitchen and in their bedroom. And that's literally the thing with this girl. She comes from a strong Christian background. And right now she's dealing with a lot of shame, and the young girl is going to her Bible, literally for Bible passages. She's mortified that she was duped. So there's that process. So I think it's really important for people, and that's what I just keep trying to get our community to understand, or where I speak, that it looks different, as you said, in different communities. And here in our community, we don't see people walking down the street. We don't see that active prostitution, but it is certainly happening all around us. And I hear that across the counter. I hear things from customers at the store, their kids being exploited online. So it's happening on a regular basis. So that's important. And I just think that that's something that people just are really struggling to understand.
So much of this is social media tagged. I was just listening to a podcast just the other day, and they had reiterated that it was an interview with a trafficker, and he was in a position that he had nothing to lose, and he was talking about his trafficking practice. And he said, we just love young girls in the Midwest because they're polite and they do what they're told, and you think about that. We teach our kids those properties. We teach them to be great kids. We teach them to be good Christians. Those are the things that we do. And the hard part about this is that traffickers know these things, and so they use it against them, and they manipulate. And they're doing this through social media. It's not the picture of the girl walking down the street anymore.
The thing I'd love to talk about next is, how do we both prevent this from happening, right? How do we keep this from happening to our kids, to our neighbors, to our community members? So that's the first question. And then the second question, how do we help people who have been exposed to traffickers or who've been groomed? How do we really help them heal?
I would like to just say that that was the question that this mother, that was the first thing she said when she texted me last night at about 11 p.m. She said, my gosh, I found she has sent me pictures. Will she ever heal from this? And this, so this is important, what you just asked. What happens now? And that's the part that I'm so drawn to help parents through, because I don't have the answer, but I'm going to be trying to connect her with resources, and that's the most important thing we as advocates can do, I believe, is connect with resources. You know, that's what I feel like my passion is, and encouraging her to understand that her daughter is a victim. This is not her fault. To love her through it, and to get her around other people who have maybe experienced such things, so she can understand she's not alone in this situation. And that's what I'm hearing from her right now. And that's where I would like to do. Since we haven't been doing our monthly anti-trafficking meetings with our Washington County Anti-Trafficking group, we did the one with the Peacemakers, the one virtual one, and I'd like to do another one specifically on this topic of what to do when you see something or find something as a parent on your children's phone. How do you respond and react, or respond, not react, because react is a scary thing. You're angry, you're hurt, you're freaking out, and that's not the right way to react or to respond. So how to respond intentionally, and what resources that we as advocates can offer for healing, and just for legally as well.
And we need to have these conversations with our kids early on. You know, if we haven't had the conversations with them all along the line, and I'm really talking about, you know, starting with at 3 years old, what's private and what's not private. And then, you know, putting it out there to them in ways that they can understand, that's age appropriate, so that when we get to the point where, you know, they're on their social media, they're engaging in it, that we've already had those conversations, and that we have already emphasized where, you know, you need to come to talk to me. And as Wendy said, not be condemning, but, you know, maybe that is just, you know, when you feel like you're in trouble and you're afraid, call me anytime, I will come get you, or let's have the conversation. I think that there's an issue, but then not to react and condemn, to help them through the situation and to listen and not condemn them. So that, I think, is extremely important, and to find those resources to do that.
Just the shame. The shame is the number one. Once they get to that point where they've got them shamed, they can control them and do anything. And that's literally where this situation is right now, is this girl is so full of shame. And so, yeah, such a powerful tool that predators use.
People that I know who are survivors, they cannot get through this without their faith. It amazes me the level and the depth of faith and dependence on God these women have as they've gone through this process. And so I think that is also a really important aspect of how do women get through this. And Wendy, you kind of emphasized that where you said that this is a Christian family, and you know, they're going back to their roots to find out how they can get through this, because I really do believe that it's God who gets people through this stuff.
You know, when shame is used as a tool against a kid, a young woman, a young adult being trafficked, how do we as people of faith respond in a way that isn't shaming, right? And let's face it, shame is a tool that parents use frequently, that teachers use frequently. If there's any mantra that comes to mind from my own parents, it's shame on you. When you do something bad, like shame on you, right? So how do we kind of, I don't know, understand shame and be able to not use shame with our kids as it relates to sex and sexuality?
One of the things that and honestly, this is by the grace of God, when this conversation happened on our drive up here, we had a chance to talk, this mother and I, and it's somebody I know as well from my old church. And the the shame element was so strong. And I said, maybe try. She said her daughter even shared with her a Bible passage. She said she intentionally, she's 14, went to her Bible and shared this passage with her that she had been reading and praying on, and how much guilt and she felt her mother hated her and was disgusted with her. And I said, maybe consider sharing with her how if you together expose the darkness, this is pure darkness and evil. And if you expose it to God's light, what's going to happen? What's going to happen then? And how is that going to change things? And I said, that's to me is very hopeful. And maybe and so the fact that her daughter had those roots was extremely helpful in this situation. It's not like you're trying to start from scratch. So just sometimes I think people forget, even though they have that faith. I mean, after I said that, and she hit the ground running with her faith, and just went from this to that and to that in different Bible passages, and how she was going to talk to her. And really all I did was just advocate, and I prayed that God would put something in my mouth that would be helpful for this woman. But I think the faith element, like Deb said, is so incredibly powerful and important in that exposing that evil and putting God's light on it, and help in knowing that we can get through it then, regardless of it, of what it is.
And loving each other through it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've learned about shame is that the antidote to shame is empathy, right? So when I hear you saying, Wendy, to this mom and her daughter, like, hey, you're not alone. Other people have experienced this too. That alone is a really powerful understanding, that I'm not alone in this. There are other people who've experienced it. And then the second part too is that this isn't, I am not bad. This situation is bad. That I'm not damaged goods, right? I'm still the beloved child of God, and I can heal from this.
Even in the definition, the legal definition of trafficking, force, fraud, and coercion, I mean, it defines right there that these kids are being duped. They're being tricked. It's not their fault. Maybe they did something, but there's so much in our culture and society that paves the way for them to be tricked into this. And that, that sense of, we can get through this. I love you, and we can get through this together. And it's not your fault. You've been tricked. How do we fix it? How do I work with you and make you feel that you can find your way out of this?
Yeah, that feels really important. Absolutely. Wendy, how about for you?
Well, I was going to say that the mom, when I shared with her that, I said, if you are willing or open, I said, I have a friend who went through a similar situation with her daughter, that I feel confident if I asked that she would be willing to talk to you. And she was and we talked about, as Deb said, I said, I have talked to so many people. I said, your story is not one and only. I said, there are so many stories that I personally have heard that are just like this. They're just like this. This is textbook. I said, this isn't anything unusual, although it feels like it is to you. So I said, but there's people who have gone through it and come out the other end and are thriving and healthy and happy. And I said, I would love to connect you. And she was absolutely so relieved to know that, she felt in this dark hole. She felt it was her fault, but she doubted herself. She, her daughter is feeling ugly and she's not sure. And she's feeling all of the things. I encouraged the mom to keep the mother stayed calm. She reached out to the police. She reached out to me. I said, you've done everything you could do right now, and you've done it all right. And you just keep going forward. There's more, and there's healing, and you will be okay. And for her to feel that there's other people, and there's resource, and there's a community of people that are willing and who have been through things like this, who understand it, who are knowledgeable about it and can help and will walk with her. It was like 1,000,000 pounds lifted off her shoulders, yet she's still got a long journey to go. But how comforting, you know?
I'm so glad that you're there for her, Wendy, and that just, for me, reiterates the importance of the organizations you both have started in your counties, so that people have a place they can go to find support, to talk about this, so that it, shame grows when it's not talked about, right? It just festers and gets bigger, and you get in it deeper. And so to have places where you can go and speak your truth and be heard and listened to, and then not only that, but cared for, feels so important. So the question of prevention, how do we educate ourselves and our kids so that they can look out for those people that are trying to dupe them? Especially given that I don't know if I want to give up my Midwestern nice, that's kind of a nice part of being a Midwesterner, right? We're kind people, we're agreeable. But how do we teach our kids to stand up for themselves, to look out for this, to be able to challenge an adult? Where does that start? I know, Deb, you said, as early as 3 years old, we should be talking about what's appropriate as it relates to our boundaries with our physical bodies. But what else contributes to that prevention?
I can't really think of any better way to prevent this. For parents to be educated and learn about online exploitation, online predators, online safety. You can Google it and get 1,000,000 trillion resources. Wisconsin, you could just Google in Wisconsin, or nationally, we have national organizations that can help and have so many resources. There's no excuse not to be educated, really. It's just taking the time and understanding how important it is in our lives. And then my conversation with this woman, and this is my conversation with myself. It's my conversation with other people. Once the kids hit a certain teen age, they're not listening to us anymore. We can tell them, we can educate them, but if they don't have the base starting young, as Deb referred to, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a very tough road in trying to get them to hear us. I experienced it my own self. I didn't talk about it enough with my kids when they were younger. And I started at their teenage years when things were going awry. And it was complete shutdown, and mom is an idiot and knows nothing. And so that is what we are battling once we get to those teenage years. So there are websites and things that can speak to the kids, to the teens, that we need to connect them with, so they're not hearing it from mom and dad, they're hearing it from other teens, other peers. And so I think that's really an important part, is just the ongoing conversations, talk about it, make it normal to talk about it, but start young, and then as teenagers, connect them with resources that they're going to listen to, hopefully.
And I think that goes along with building an environment within your family of being able to have conversations with just listening and acknowledging and not condemning or having a response for everything, so that kids are willing to have the conversation with you and are willing to come to you when something is not right. And I think that is really important. And then the second part I'd say is to have or provide those opportunities where kids can hear these stories. Emmy Myers from Lacey's Hope Project, her story is just, it's the typical kid story, and what happened to her. And for kids to hear that, I think it makes a huge difference between hearing it from somebody who's had that experience, who's closer to their age, as opposed to mom and dad, preaching to them. So providing those opportunities, I think, is so important.
I just had this conversation with my 19-year-old daughter. Now we're kind of through a big hump from her earlier teenage years, but she's like, well, how can I know? Everybody is a danger then. And I said, what happens is, I think you have to take the emotion out of it and look at the facts, what's happening. This is a situation, a 38-year-old man reaching out to a 19-year-old girl, wanting her social media, wanting to connect for a lunch date. Oh, but he's very nice. He's just friendly. It's innocent. It's just because we connected on this topic. You start looking at the red flags, taking emotion out. And that's, sometimes, because I say that the creepometer, people think is going to pull them through these things. There's the smoke screen that predators put out there covers the creepometer. That's what I tell my kids, and I say, it covers it. So that's why you have to look at facts. You have to pull the facts out. Oh, that's a flag. Oh, that's a flag. Oh, that's a red flag. And look at it from that way. Or if you need to, call your sister, your friend, your mom, somebody that you trust, and find out, am I missing something?
Yeah.
That's just one tool.
All right, so if you're watching this podcast, you'll see that throughout the entire conversation with Deb and Wendy, I am taking copious notes because they offer so much wisdom and guidance for those of us raising kids in this culture. And so I really hope that with this episode, you will take the chance to read the show notes to link to the two organizations that Wendy and Deb are a part of. Waukesha, Washington County Anti-Trafficking Advocates has a Facebook page with monthly events all around educating us on this topic. And the Faith Coalition Against Sex Trafficking, FCAST, has a website full of resources to help you get educated, including a link to the online seminar that Deb mentions, with stories from Emmy Myers and others around the topic of sex trafficking, keeping our kids safe, keeping our community safe. So please check out those in the show notes. I want to just highlight the takeaway for me from this, one of many, is remembering to ground myself and my kids in their faith and in a faith practice that reiterates and emphasizes that God is good and that we are good and that nothing can separate us from the goodness of God, right? To remember that even those situations where we feel totally alone, totally separated, small, those shameful moments, that God still loves us. And if we can expose the hard part of what we're going through to the light, we will come out of it. We will heal from it. I just love that message from Wendy. And so I just want to encourage all of us to keep finding ways to connect to the love of God. I hope you'll stick with Wendy and Deb for the rest of the episode, where they explain and tell us about their own faith practice that keeps them grounded for this work, and also to hear their favorite products, which you will get a discount on using Deb Wendy Pod. From now until August 29th, you'll get one free candle for every 3 candles you purchase. So check that out at franciscanpeacemakers.com. Link in the show notes for that discount as well. And a note to our local customers that we now offer in-store pickup. So you can shop online and choose in-store pickup to avoid shipping costs. So we're so excited to have that added to our website and hope that you'll check it out. So with that, we go back to Deb and Wendy to hear a little more about their own self-care practices. As always, thanks for listening. And until next week, peace and all good. First is this work of holding space for people who are going through, really horrific, traumatic experiences is hard. So how do you as individuals stay centered and grounded so that you can provide that space and be these strong, amazing, caring advocates that you are?
When I was in college, my parents gave me the gift of sending me to a class, or actually course, on, it was transcendental meditation. And so I've been doing meditation for years and years and years. and have, looked at various aspects of that. And so in all fairness, I have tried to pass that on to my daughters as well. And I say, even if you can just sit for 5 minutes, it can be transformational in a process of getting your head on straight. And then I'll just add, a lot of people just walking and processing things. And that's another way I process too, is just going for that walk.
Beautiful. Thank you, Deb. That's awesome. Wendy, how about you?
Okay, well, I'm sure that I am not sitting nearly as still for as long as Deb is. But I do believe in that quiet time, absolutely 100%. I need it, I crave it, I must have it. But mine is, and it's, I start my mornings with a devotion out of my favorite Jesus Calling by Sarah Young, and it's because I call it the devotion for dummies, because it's so simple and powerful to me, and it's based on scripture, and it is just enough to get me to want to read it every day. It's not too much. It's not too much thinking, and if I want to read more, I can read more, but it's the thing that gets me to meditate on something, or I guess to meditate on or think on, and I do. I sit with that. I posted on our Facebook page on Faith and Giggles. So many people love that I post the Jesus Calling, which I love, because to me, the fact that our audience, our retail audience, loves that I am posting a devotion is very motivating to me and inspiring to me. So I do that, but I have dogs. So then I like to be with my dogs. So that's why it's not quite as calm and quiet, Deb, as your situation probably is. So really every morning I spend time with my dogs, my devotion. So dogs and Jesus and nature, actually, because you know what, if I'm around a tree, I'm good. And that's really the truth. When things get a little hectic in my life, we are blessed right now. We bought a house in the fall, and it's got a little bit of chunk of land and some trees and some nature, and I will walk out and just lay there in the midst of the trees if I need to. That is what I will do if my feet are in the ground somehow, and I'm listening to the birds. That's how I regroup, and I feel rejuvenated. If I don't have that, it sometimes can be a tougher day.
That's beautiful. Both of you have such Franciscan spirits. Francis was all about the silence and the nature. So I just love that that's the practices that you both have are very Franciscan in nature. And then the last question, what is your favorite Franciscan Peacemaker Bath and Body product? And I couch this with, you have to be specific. You can't just say all of them.
Lemon Verbena candle.
Ooh, thanks, Deb. Where do you?
So I have multiple candles around my house, and I like using them for my prayer time as well.
Beautiful. And Wendy, in 30 seconds or less?
Sacred amber candle.
Sacred amber.
Same thing. Love it. The new scent. Love it.
And you can purchase those Peacemaker Bath and Body products at Faith and Giggles, Hartford, where I just want to tell our podcast listeners, Wendy and Jason, the owners of Faith and Giggles, have been incredibly generous with Peacemakers and don't take any cut of the products that they sell at their store. All of the proceeds of the products purchased at Faith and Giggles comes right to the Franciscan Peacemakers social enterprise, so that we can keep employing and providing space for women to heal from sex trafficking. So Wendy, thank you, and for the beautiful ministry that you have there, and for your awesome shop. We hope that people will come visit you in Hartford.
Yes, come see us. Yep. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all you are doing, Shelley, personally, and the Peacemakers. So proud. I'm so proud to be a part of it.
As am I. Thank you, Shelley.
You are welcome. Thank you both for joining us, and look forward to seeing you in person for real next time.